Welcome to the Real Estate Jam session. We've got a great guest today that's going to talk to us about cold calling. Jesse Limon built his career on cold calling, and actually he's got a team of like 7 or 8 people that he's grooming right now, and they're all starting off with cold calling. So who better to have come on to the show today and talk to us how to get started with your cold calling. It's a very, very daunting thing to do. I've had to do it myself for a lot of years. So if you are new to the channel, my name is Joe Killinger. I've been in real estate for over 20 years. I've been an investor, a broker, a founder, so I've kind of done it all. And so what we do on this channel is we bring in people like Jesse to talk to you about tools to get you to the path to success. So if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe and make sure you tune in and see what Jesse has to say. Everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Jam session. We've got a good one today. Something that all of you that are real estate agents, be it commercial or residential, need to be doing, and that's cold calling. And so I got you a cold calling specialist out of Marcus Millichap in New York, Jesse Limon. Jesse, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chopping it up with. Looking forward to chopping it up with you.
I know it. It's cold calling it's a necessary evil. I hated it. I hated it when I was doing it, but it's what got me started in our business. And I was terrible at it. I wish I'd have had you around back then, but you were probably in diapers at that time. So we don't need to, but it's a powerful tool. It needs to be part of everybody's marketing. And I see your marketing you're doing on social. And first of all, well done. Every time I go on, I'm seeing your stuff, and you're adding value every time you post something, and humor. You're using a little humor every once in a while too. So it makes me really want to look at it. But so now you've been doing commercial real estate for 12 years or so?
Yeah, about 12 years.
Okay.
Doing real estate in total for about 17 years.
Okay.
Started off in residential, and I did cold calls back then too. And I remember being like hand sweating, shaking.
Mine still do. I just don't know why. When I do it, it's tough. It's tough for me.
I'm petrified of it. I was so bad at it, but it was funny. I was so bad at it, but I ended up listing this was in Indiana, this luxury waterfront property from cold calling this attorney. And it was, like for Indiana, it was like 700,000 plus. And I was blown. I mean, the typical deal was about 30, 40, 50,000 bucks back then for an Indiana resident, for like a new agent. But it was from a cold call. And I was like, this is insane. I literally called this guy. He was so nice to me. It made it really easy to talk to him.
Yeah.
But it was like a turning point in my head, like, okay, so I just need more practice. And that was in the residential days. So you crawl before you walk.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to, we tell our agents, listen, it's, first of all, if you call somebody and they are mad at you, they're not going to remember your name the next week. You could probably call them back and they won't remember you. But, it's very hard. You got to not take it personal, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's difficult. So now your focus is on triple net deals right now, correct?
Yeah, for the most part. I sell shopping strips, multi-tenant deals, but I got a division that does commercial properties in New York.
Okay.
So those aren't typically triple nets. We're working on a development site. My team, we do a weekly cold call best practices session with all the new guys. And we kind of walk through what they're experiencing. But like you said, I mean, cold calling, if you're taking it personal, it's definitely going to leave a mark.
Yeah.
It's not, if you're taking it personal, there's some mental tricks that I think a lot of people don't, get to because the anxiety level is so high.
Yeah.
And so I had heard this mental trick from a boss of mine at some point down the line, and he told me that the psychology of a cold call, if you don't think about the rejection that's inherent on most cold calls.
Yeah.
But you think about, instead, you try to train your mind on the fact that there's like real potential for game-changing paychecks, you know, on a
Yes.
cold call.
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was a job where you could say, I just made 4 times the average salary, you know, it's commercial real estate in one deal.
Sure.
And you can do a deal a month. So if you think about it, there's real opportunity on the other side of that scary phone.
Yeah.
So it's all about reps, you know.
It is.
Phone's heavy. Make more phone calls, make more cold calls, you
Yeah.
know, do those reps.
It is.
Like
It's hard to get motivated. Now you've got a team of what, 8 or 9 people?
We got 5 agents, including myself now.
Okay.
Last year it was just me. So we've grown decently this year. Got a couple we got three newer agents and 2 senior agents, including me. But we're starting to see one of our new guys just listed an $8 million Chipotle.
Oh,
Brooklyn. That was a cold call based lead. Cold called, and you know, predominant almost everything that I've ever done was cold call based.
okay.
And the way that I had started, I was working on drugstores and dollar stores, and so I started working on dollar stores because drugstores were mentally too intimidating. I think psychologically. This is
Sure.
like, you know, 12 years ago.
Yeah, we find them.
Just getting really focused on the numbers, and so I took some of the heat off of myself by calling Dollar Generals like $1 million, $500,000. And I mean, it actually worked out really well for me, because then you know, I got some traction on cold calling, and so I was working on, you know, $500,000 to $1.5 million deals, and then I was working on drugstores, you know, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 million deals. And so I was able to, you know, then I was able to create opportunity to diversify my business by cold calling people and reaching out directly. You know, be able to chop it up with a developer. And, you know, it's funniest thing about it, cold calling, if you try to stick with what you know, it's kind of like a Gary Vee thing. He talks about, even in public speaking, if you're focused on like what you're going to say and all this like hierarchy of your talk, you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up. But if you're just like trying to focus and dig in on the thing that, like, the topics that are interesting to you, kind of like I'm doing right now, like talking specifically about things that impact, you know, your ability to have a meaningful conversation with someone, but not trying to have a conversation about something that you don't know about. Like, that's one of the biggest flaws, is like allowing the conversation to go down, you know, and some line of communication that you have no place in having.
Right.
And so to me, like, you know, the cold call is all about directing where the message goes, what type of information. And sometimes, you know, you call someone and there's just no interest. You can just tell, like, you've took a few different angles in your questioning, and you're just like, a lot of people, and I've heard it, like in the cubicles, they'll just keep trying new angles, and that's good for you, I guess, if you're new. But I just pull the plug. I'm just like, all right, you know, have a great day. That's it.
Yeah.
Just take it easy. I just moving on, keep it moving. The best thing in a numbers game environment is to play the numbers game. You know, don't get caught up on one particular property. So have a list of properties that you're working on. And I think, again, going back to, like, one of the biggest hacks in my world for this job is, you know, it's a game. I mean, think of it, it's a numbers game. So
It really is.
If you think of it as a game, and you know that, like, if you're playing the game, the outcomes can be good conversation with an opportunity, mediocre conversation with maybe some, you know, time invested on your part, fortune is in the follow-up type of an opportunity, then could take 12, 24, 36 months. Who knows? It just depends on how long the combination of that person liking you, learning to like you, and or a need, and how you position that. Or you can get told to go, you know, do such and such, and, you know, kick rocks. Right. So, like, those are
kick rocks.
but everybody's focused on that. Everybody's focused on the rejection. And
Yeah.
so rather than being focused on the rejection, if you're focused on the potential, and if you know that that's going to happen and you prepare yourself for it, you're just more accepting of it. Like, so me personally, I don't call people expecting something to happen.
Mhm.
So part of my expectations are I'm calling people to plant a seed. And if you ever watched, a plant grow, it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes time, Scott needs water and sunlight. So you have to nurture that relationship, that seed, in order for anything to happen anyways. So the cold call shouldn't be taken that serious. It's a starting point.
Yeah, taking it personal is the tough, and capturing the email, so you can stay in touch, put them in your CRM to stay in touch with them. You're right. Build that relationship. Now, Jesse, do you guys use scripts, or how do you do it?
I think it's important to be able to absorb a script, but embed it into what you're saying naturally.
Right. Make it flow.
Yeah, I just don't think a script works.
I agree, because it almost starts sounding robotic,
Yeah.
but it needs to just flow. And, I'll tell you what I tell our agents is, let's say you're in multifamily in Hollywood. You need to know Hollywood multifamily better than anybody else. And if you have that information, that I know how many properties are on the market right now. I know how many have sold the last 6 months. I know the average size. I know average price, days on market. Don't you think that makes it a lot easier if you have all that data in your head? So when you're having those conversations, it gives you something to talk about.
I mean, yeah, you do need to know the data set to some degree.
Yeah.
But you can also use that as an opportunity to bring in the expert if you're not that advanced.
Right.
You're like, yeah, we can chop up the numbers. We can talk about the numbers. We can talk about the details. But let's bring Joseph on, that call. Let's bring Jesse. So I think it's the best thing to do is not have this in order to be successful, you need to know this, because I've seen guys who don't know anything make enough phone calls. And
Me too. I just talked to one yesterday.
Well, and they're just good
how the hell?
Well, they work ambiguity well. They don't need to know. You pin them down on stuff and they play that right, then they can turn that into a meeting with you or whoever. So I think a lot of it comes from understanding that it's not really a lot of people focus too much on the fact that they're cold calling, and really what they need to understand is that you're a character in an acting job to an extent. You're in character, and so if you were in a movie and somebody told you to go such and such or do this and that or never to call them again or whatever, try to act like the star of a movie. Like, hey, thanks, have a great day. And then move on to the next one. And really kind of to get better at it, you want to be a pro in that space, to push yourself to communicate better, to have maybe learn articulation of just very basic things, and learn how to, take an essay and turn it into a tweet, which make it easy for people to hear. And that way, if they don't want to talk to you, you get that out of the way pretty quick, and then you can go on to the next one. So kind of summarize, a lot of people that make cold calls overcomplicate it with, let me explain to you why I'm the broker that you want to talk to. And then they're forced to figure out there's just and then there's, you better say something interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, you're setting yourself up for failure, because
I would agree.
That's open to so much different opinions of what is good, and then, so whatever you say, that person's probably, it's a low probability process to begin with, keeping somebody on the phone. So again, try to spark up a meaningful conversation about politics or things that are affecting owners. Put yourself in the shoes of that person when, generically, just when you're cold calling people, you got to have something to keep them on the phone, something to get them
Yeah.
to the next level.
Yeah, you got to bring value. If you're just talking to talk, it's tough to pull in business. Jesse, do you have a schedule or timing that you do, or a certain number of calls that you do every day? I hit 100 and I'm done for the day, or whatever the number is. And I only call from 8:30 to 10:30.
So it used to be that I had the time to make 100, 150 calls.
Right.
But so I would recommend that anybody that's taking up cold calling, block. Right now, I can't block as much time as I like 6 hours. But like, to me, if you're in commercial real estate, most of your time should be, if you want to be successful, should be in, creating new leads.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you spend all your time on this listing, you get it out to the market, and you're not focused on anything else but this deal, and then it sells, you got nothing behind it, right? Well, no, you got nothing behind it. If a lot of people make the mistake of letting their foot off the gas. And so, I think, it's like any regimen. If you want to be successful, you've got so much time in a day, and if a phone call is worth $250,000, then why aren't you making more of them?
Yeah. If you're doing, man, that's a lot. 6 hours a day is a lot. That you would be the goat of calling.
Well, I mean, I would. So my typical day, like during 2019, was from noon to 6 was my typical cold calling day. And let's say it started at 1, it would be 7. And if I needed to call more, I would call, more west from an East Coast perspective. But if you're working like a local market, like multifamily or something, I would say, especially is, get in, be consistent and make as many calls as you can. And 50, if you're having, it just depends on how you're quantifying the numbers, but you want to kind of start with the end in mind. So depending on what your end goals are, that would be like, it's hard to quantify it. Like everybody has their own definition of what a one call is.
Yeah. I'll tell you what we do, Jesse, is with our agents is, we'll say, okay, so you start at 8:30, you get your, respond to emails from the night before, get your marketing up. If you're doing social marketing, 9:30, you're on the phones, cold calling, from 8:45 to, or 9:15 to 11 is, or about 11 is cold calls. Then 11 to noon is warm calls, sphere of influence calls. And then lunch, and then after lunch, you can continue doing warm calls for an hour. And then from 2 to 4:30, cold calls, and then answer emails. And so we have a structure like that. We're finding that works pretty good. So, but again, it depends on the person.
I think as long as they're outbound calls with people you haven't done business with, I think you're good. As long as you're in lead generation mode.
Yeah, I agree. It's got to be lead generation. We have some agents like to use scripts, some don't. We've got, some of them just don't feel that they need it. They just want to pick up the phone, have a conversation with a person on the other end, but they know their retail clients very well. They know what's going on in the area. So they're very strong with that. But I think you have to come, you've got to come with a knowledge base, right? You've got to bring something of value.
For sure. I mean, you have to have something interesting that you can propose, some, best practice or, but I think that's always the hardest part for people is figuring out, how to position themselves in the market on that call,
right?
Create it. And that's something that I think regardless of whether you're selling commercial real estate or, lumber, it's just like, because you're always competing. So it's just, there's this value proposition that you have to be able to speak to. So the first, 30 seconds of a cold call are very important. So
yes,
what a a good agent or a good cold caller will do is try to get enough calls in to where they can start to recalibrate the words that they say, but almost always say like a similar pattern until they get to a certain point. Because it's almost like, it's like knowing a code. You know, there's like a higher probability code to keep people on the phone if they're
keep them engaged.
To keep them engaged, to move things forward. And what I recommend is everyone has their own pattern, their own timing. So learn yours. And the way you do that is to stay on those calls as long as you can, make repetitive calls, almost like you say a script. I say it's embedded, you know, it's something that you've learned, you've trained yourself, you have a pattern of saying it. It's not always the same exact thing. But if you're going to make calls and introducing yourself, you know, and your business, you want to really dial it down to some very specific things that you talk about consistently. So you're not reinventing the wheel every time. And, you know, 3 months has passed and your old cold call script worked, but now it doesn't. You know, so I think it's important to keep, you know, kind of keep tabs on what's going on around us politically, but also, you know, market timing with respect to interest rates, and just sort of be able to speak to your own activity within the space, you know, but also how you add value and like have stories on tap, you know, things that you can just speak to in a way that, so there's you know, you're an entertainer.
Yeah, have the antidotes. And, you know, Jesse, one thing that I learned, especially somebody that is newer, is they want to talk so bad because they think if they're talking, you know, that's bringing value. And that's not necessarily the case. Don't you find that, you know, you give your little spiel for your first few seconds and then listen? And I think, you know, my dad used to say, Joe, you've got one mouth and two ears. You're going to do better in sales if you do more listening than talking. So are you finding that's the case with your cold calling?
Oh, always. I mean, yeah, the biggest thing, like I said, it's all about positioning your, whatever you're saying, what, you know, what you're there to call them for. So it's communicating well and then giving them an opportunity to speak and then guiding that dialogue with them, so that you're, you know, if there's an opportunity to help them, then, you know, that's the line you're following. If there's an opportunity to follow up later, then, you know, but again, it's listening and knowing how to ask the right questions and keep them engaged. So it's a few different skill sets involved at the same time.
Yeah, knowing the market, I think if you're talking to somebody that has a property, you can say, you know, I see that you've owned this property for X amount of time, and then get into everything going on in the community. There's power in that. And that can create conversation. But
yeah, I mean,
you know,
you see a lot of these guys, you know, or ladies in the market, walk their market, live in their market, just depending on what the product type is. But yeah, you want to, you know, be so focused on it that people get tired of talking to you, that, you know, that know you outside of commercial real estate.
Yeah, you want to be the end all be all for everything in that community, right? You want them to think,
Right.
you know what, hey, I need some investments. Who do I call? I call Jesse right away. I see his marketing. You know, he's cold called me a few times. You know, and I think one last point. And I know you were running a little long, but follow up. What kind of system do you guys utilize to follow up on your cold calls?
I mean, I think various CRMs
Okay.
are important, depending upon how the organization is structured. But I think some people use just Gmail, not people that I know. No, I'm just saying. I use Salesforce.
Yeah.
Other people use, you know, there's a lot of different CRM options.
Sure.
I've heard of some, no, but I have friends who are just still on a stack of business cards.
Oh, wow.
I have no idea how they do it, but
That'd be tough.
In my space, yeah, because, you know, like doing $1 million deals, you know, a stack of business cards won't get you very far. But unless they own hundreds, but yeah, like, I guess, it just depends on if you're doing more institutional size deals, then yeah, so it's case by case, but I say, try to keep as good a records as possible. It's not just like a one, stop call and sales scenario.
You bet.
This thing takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, if you're good at it, it will. You just got to keep it building. Now, how often do you call them back? Do you call once a month or?
Just, like I say, I try to decide based on. Sometimes it depends on the vibe I got from them the last time I talked to them,
Gotcha.
but I think that over calling is one of the ways you lose contact with people.
Yeah.
Under calling. So, everybody's going to have to make their own decision on that one. But I try to take a low pressure approach to working with them, and just makes it easier for me.
Yeah.
It's low pressure for me too. If it's low pressure for me, it's low pressure for them. It's just a function of I'm in the business. So when you need help, I'm here to help you.
And do you capture their email and put them on an email program then as well?
It's hard to capture emails on a phone call, but if I can, I do.
Yeah.
So
that's what we do. We try and capture an email, and if we can, then we'll put them in their CRM. And then, if there's something that they think this person should know about, we don't want to just blindly email everybody, because you'll get unsubscribed real quick. But capture their email and but bring value to them. So we're always focused about value. But Jesse, give me your number one tip for being the best cold caller out there. What do you got? I'm gonna throw you under the bus here a little bit.
Fail forward.
Fail. Okay, good.
Yeah, if you're walking into a fire, be ready for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I learned how to appreciate the insults, various things. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Look, there's not a lot of jobs like this. It doesn't have to feel right to be wrong. It's not illegal what we do.
Right.
So fail forward. Try to have fun with it. Make tallies of how many times you get told to kick rocks or whatever, and make a game of it, because
you have to. You really have to, and you can't take it personal. I think my number one tip, Jesse, is patience. I talked to a guy years ago in Dallas, and he cold called a major company. 7 years later, he did like a $50 million deal with them. So patience and staying in touch, follow up. He would send them an email once a month, and that was it. He goes, occasionally they would call and ask for something, just a quick question, but he goes 7 years. So, and it all started with a cold call. And you just talked about your guy with Chipotle. You think about how many people are calling on that Chipotle, and your guy won out. So you guys are obviously doing something right. But all right, Jesse, thank you very much. Folks, if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. And if you need Jesse, I'm going to put his contact information. Anything you need in Manhattan, I guess in Indiana too, huh? Are you doing real estate in Indiana?
I'm national. We've got listings in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. I work the entire country. We're active in New Mexico right now, Arizona. The whole country. We do 1031 exchanges. Okay. So we help solve a lot of different type of problems. On the listing side, we work a lot with developers.
Okay. All right. Well, Jesse Limon, Marks and Millichap out of Manhattan, nationwide. Contact information is going to be below. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. Jesse, thank you very much for taking the time to come on today.
Appreciate you, Joe.